Etna erupts. 1 man is dead and 14 are injured. The Queen talks about the good news. She praises the unsung heroes. A man armed with a knife holds a 4-year-old hostage. And Winnie Mandela visits her husband, but goes home to face rearrest. Good evening. A Christmas Day eruption of Mount Etna in Sicily has left 1 man dead and 14 people injured, some of them seriously. The 10,000-foot volcano spewed a stream of molten lava down its slopes, and a tourist hotel was destroyed by earth tremors. Luckily, the worst-hit area was largely uninhabited.
In the early hours of this morning, a sudden earth tremor shook the slopes of Mount Etna and the volcano split asunder. Soon, a stream of molten lava 50 yards wide was pouring down the mountainside. Etna is the only active volcano in Europe, and this was its 130th recorded eruption. As the glowing trail of lava spewed out, families spending Christmas in this hotel were jolted awake as the ground shook. Most guests and staff fled the building, but 1 man in his 30s stayed inside to get his wife and small son out. They survived, but another shock brought the hotel crashing down on top of him. Fortunately, the lava flow was channeled into an uninhabited valley in this wild area of Sicily. But the emergency services were standing by. 2 years ago, Mount Etna, which has 200 small craters, erupted for 129 days, causing millions of pounds worth of damage. The small number of people living near Etna are spending this Christmas watching and waiting to see if the volcano subsides or continues to erupt.
Here, Christmas celebrations have been affected by bad weather in many parts. The royal family joined a packed congregation at St George's Chapel in Windsor for their traditional Christmas service. But at the end of the service, it was time for umbrellas, although the Queen Mother had some problems with hers as the Princess of Wales surveyed the storm clouds. With the rain and Christmas dinner waiting, Prince Philip was anxious to get everyone into the cars. Princess Michael of Kent was dressed against the weather, as was Princess Diana, but Prince Charles wanted to make sure everyone was on their way home. Princess Alexandra in a military-style coat formed the rearguard. In her Christmas broadcast, the Queen concentrated on the good news, which she said was often easy to overlook among the year's bad news. Her message, which was beamed by satellite to Europe and Scandinavia for the first time, highlighted the service and bravery of ordinary men and women. She said that their efforts in industry and in both voluntary and public service often went unrecognised.
It used to be said that no news is good news. But today you might well think that good news is no news. Yet there is a lot of good news, and some wonderful things are going on, in spite of the frightening headlines. Just think of the quiet courage and dedication of the peacekeepers and the rescue workers, and all those who work so hard to restore shattered lives and disrupted communities. But while bravery and service to the community are recognized by honors and awards, there are many ways in which people can make good news. Success in industry and commerce, for instance, creates the wealth that provides so many of the things that make life happier and more comfortable. Christmas is a time of good news. I believe it is a time to look at the good things of life and to remember that there are a great many people trying to make the world a better place, even though their efforts may go unrecognized. There's a lesson in this for us all, and we should never forget our obligation to make our own individual contributions, however small, towards the sum of human goodness.
Among the stories of courage and services highlighted by the Queen were the efforts of 2 firemen from Milford Haven, Mr Terence Langdon and Mr Michael George. They were both awarded the Queen's Gallantry Medal for helping to rescue people trapped on board a ship after an explosion. Michael George spoke today about his part in the rescue and his feelings about the award.
There was an explosion which killed 4 men, and the brigade were called, and whilst we were carrying out rescues, there was a second explosion in which 15 other people were injured, and then subsequently, whilst we were doing our own rescues of ourselves, there was a third explosion, and most of the injured were firemen. I don't think fear comes into it. At the time, you're too busy to be frightened. Probably later, you wish you were anywhere but there. And this Christmas, we must think about the people who have actually lost people, the families of the 4 dead men. the good things. It shows up the spirit of the fire brigade, generally, and it's recognition, I think, of the whole British Fire Service. It's unfortunate, really, that whatever accident you see, in the forefront you will always see the firemen, and sometimes their actions go unrewarded and unrecognised. I think on this occasion that we've been singled out as individuals for a team effort.
The problems of Britain's inner cities and violence in South Africa were among the subjects tackled in a Christmas message to Anglicans from the Archbishop of York. Here's what he said.
Usually the Church of England Christmas message comes from Canterbury, but the Archbishop, Dr. Robert Runcie, is recovering from an operation, so this year the Archbishop of York took over the job. He spoke of a feeling of powerlessness over political dilemmas and suggested the feeling was not confined to the man in the street.
There is also a sense of powerlessness among the allegedly powerful, who may well feel no less trapped by the constraints within which they have to make their decisions. We hear it again and again, don't we? There's no alternative.
The Archbishop also mentioned a recent visit he made to South Africa.
And came away oppressed with the sense that events there in South Africa are moving inexorably in the direction of further violence and bloody conflict.
And in the Middle East, he said, mistrust and hatred showed no sign of diminishing.
And as we think about that particular cauldron on this Christmas day, let us pray for our fellow Christians in the land where it all began.
The Pope has appealed to Catholics around the world to build a new society based on justice and godliness. In his traditional Christmas message, he said the birth of Christ gave hope in a world weighed down by a massive suffering. He ended by wishing Christians a happy Christmas in 51 languages. Armed police are surrounding a block of flats at Northolt in Middlesex, where a man wielding a kitchen knife is holding a 4-year-old child hostage. It's believed he's the father. The police were called after a woman staggered out of the flat with knife wounds. She later died in hospital. Friends and relatives have been trying to negotiate with him, and at one point he climbed out of the window using a woman as a shield. She managed to struggle free, and he jumped back through the kitchen window. This evening, the siege is continuing and police are talking to the man by telephone. Another 4 black people have died in violence in South Africa, and the anti-apartheid leader Winnie Mandela has called it a Christmas day of mourning. She took her family to visit her husband Nelson Mandela in Cape Town's Pollsmoor prison. Mrs. Mandela had cancelled a protest vigil outside the jail because she said the security forces were trigger-happy after recent white deaths. And after the visit, she was clearly worried about her husband.
This particular Christmas is far worse than any of the Christmases he has had in prison.
Why is that?
Because he's held in solitary confinement in hospital. We saw him in his pajamas and in his hospital attire.
Mrs. Mandela said she'd be going back home to Soweto, risking arrest again for breaking a government banning order. One of Britain's oldest variety halls has been ruined by fire. More than 70 firemen were unable to save the New Tyne Theatre in Newcastle. No one was injured in the blaze, but the building had to be evacuated and the area closed off when the stage collapsed. The theatre, which is 118 years old, is a Grade 1 listed building. Its wooden stage machinery was one of the only 2 working sets left in the world. The smoke from the blaze could be seen up to 10 miles away. And that's the news so far on Christmas Day. I'll be back with the late news at 10:40, and I hope you'll be able to join us then. Till then, we wish you a very happy Christmas.
And now the weather, and during the next 24 hours, most parts of the region will be cloudy with showers or longer periods of rain. Some of the rain will be heavy at times, more especially during tomorrow afternoon. It will remain mild, with temperatures overnight falling to near 4 degrees and rising to around 8 degrees tomorrow. Southwesterly winds will gradually back to become southeast to east by late tomorrow and will freshen a little. And the outlook for Friday and Saturday becoming very cold, with bleak northerly winds and with wintry showers. That's the weather.